Chosen one, take a deep breath right now and anchor yourself right here. What you are about to receive is not a message you found. It is a message that found you. Heaven did not let the algorithm choose this. Heaven intercepted your feed today because of what is being officially declared over your life. The enemy tried everything in his power to keep you from hearing it. But you are here, and that is not a small thing. Congratulations, it is over. And before we go any further, I need you to understand something. Not the surface version of what those words mean, the real version. Because when I show you the full picture of what has just been permanently lifted from your life, it is going to bring tears to your eyes. Not from pain, from the sheer relief of finally understanding just how much you have been carrying, and from knowing, truly knowing deep in your bones, that you will never have to carry it again. Stay right here. Do not scroll. The enemy is working overtime right now to interrupt this specific moment. What I am about to walk you through is one of the most significant things you will hear in this entire season. By the time this message is complete, you are going to understand exactly what ended today, why it could not have ended one day sooner, and what is already moving in to replace every single thing it took from you. Now let me name some things. Let me describe what you have been living with, and I want you to pay close attention, because with every sentence, something in your spirit is going to say, that is precisely what it has been like. Your body has been tired, not the kind of tired that a good night of sleep repairs, the kind that wakes up with you in the morning, already sitting on your chest before you have even opened your eyes. The confusing part is that you cannot explain it, because from the outside your life looks manageable. You are not running a marathon every single day. There is no obvious visible reason for the weight you feel, and yet something inside you has felt like it has been at war for a very long time, fighting battles that no one else can see, absorbing pressure and pain from everything around you, quietly, without complaint, because that is simply who you are. You told yourself it was stress. You told yourself it would ease when things settled down, but it never fully eased. Because, chosen one, this kind of exhaustion does not come from the body. It comes from the spirit. And your spirit has been working in places your conscious mind cannot reach, doing things you have not yet been given the language to understand. You prayed. I need you to hear that and hold on to it. You did not give up on God. You did not walk away from your faith, even when there was no visible evidence that anything was shifting. You kept showing up to conversations with heaven, even when heaven went very, very quiet. And you watched people around you receive answers, while your own requests seemed to circle without landing. Something in you started to wonder, quietly, if maybe you were the exception. If maybe there was something in your faith that was missing, some reason that grace seemed to reach everyone else before it reached you. Chosen one, I need to say this clearly. Your prayers were not blocked. Your faith was not the reason for the delay. What was happening during that silence was something far more deliberate than you could have known from inside of it. And today, I am going to show you exactly what God was building, while the quiet felt so heavy. And the people, chosen one, the people. You gave without measure. You showed up when others did not. You stayed in relationships that cost more than they returned. You poured into people who kept taking, and you kept giving, because love without conditions is simply who you are. You were the one who fixed the problems, the one who held the room together, the one everyone came to when things fell apart. And you did all of it quietly, without asking for credit, because that is the nature of what you carry. But your generosity was mistaken for endlessness, as if you were a source that could never run dry. The people you sacrificed the most for, when things got genuinely hard for you, when you were the one who needed someone to show up, many of them were simply gone. That wound does not close quickly. It changes the way you trust. It changes the way you open yourself to others. And I need you to hear this today. That was not a failure on your part. That was a sifting. Heaven was clearing your room. So you pulled back. Not because something permanently broke in you, not because you stopped caring, but because something wise in your spirit recognized that your energy was sacred and could no longer be poured into places that treated it as ordinary. Your circle got smaller, your conversations got quieter. People around you called it withdrawal or emotional distance. But it was none of those things. It was discernment awakening. It was your spirit beginning to guard the very thing that heaven was preparing to use. And through all of it, through every layer of what I just described, there has been a voice, quiet, persistent, not loud enough to announce itself dramatically, but steady enough to never go entirely away. A whisper that kept returning to the same thing. This is almost over. You tried not to believe it because you have been disappointed before. You have held hope around timelines that shifted, and the weight of that is its own kind of wound. So you kept the whisper to yourself. But in the quiet moments, especially in the middle of the night, when you woke at 3 or 4 in the morning and the house was completely still, that voice was alive. In the moment when a song broke something open in your chest without warning. In the moment when a verse landed on your heart and your spirit leaned forward as if it recognized something it had been waiting for. What you were feeling was not wishful thinking. It was not desperation. It was your spirit receiving an announcement before your mind had the language for it. If you have been waking at 3 or 4 in the morning without knowing why, if you have been noticing the same numbers appearing in unexpected places, if your dreams in this season have become more vivid and more significant than usual, I need you to hear this. Those are not coming from nowhere. Those are signals. Your spirit has been in active conversation with heaven throughout this entire waiting period, and what is being declared tonight is a continuation of that same conversation. Every single thing I just named, the exhaustion that sleep could not fix, the prayers that felt unanswered, the people who left when you needed them most, the pulling back into a quieter and smaller life, the whisper that would not stop, none of those things are signs that you were falling apart. Every one of them is a mark left by a season of preparation so intense, so thorough, and so complete that the person who walks out the other side is not who walked in. The kind of person whose breakthrough, when it finally arrives, does not just change their own life, but changes the lives of everyone connected to them. And today, June 16th, 2026, that season is officially and permanently closed. Before I walk you through what this means in full, there is something I need to tell you. The breakthrough you are stepping into is not only spiritual. There is a physical dimension to what happens when a season like yours comes to a close. And before I recorded this message, heaven placed a specific tool in my path that I am going to come back to at the right moment. It is called the Genius Song. It was developed by a neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake, who spent 34 years studying what happens to the human brain during seasons of prolonged waiting and spiritual pressure. What he discovered about restoring what those seasons affect is directly relevant to where you are standing right now. I will give you the full details later in this message, because when you understand exactly how it works, it is going to make complete sense given everything I just described. For now, let that name rest in the back of your mind. There is a reason it arrived alongside this message tonight. Now, the question at the center of all of this: what exactly ended today, and why now, on this specific date, June 16th, 2026, and not a month earlier or a year ago? I am going to walk you through it, and when you see the full picture, you will never look at your past the same way again. The answer starts with understanding what God was actually doing while the silence felt so complete. Stay with me. Heaven did not go silent during the season you just came through. Let me say that directly before we go any further. What you experienced as silence was not silence at all. What you interpreted as abandonment had another name entirely, a name with a precise purpose behind it. And when I show it to you fully, you are going to look back at every moment that ached and see it from a completely different angle. The season you just survived had a specific function. It was not punishment. It was not neglect. It was not a sign that your prayers were incomplete or that your faith was too small. What it was, chosen one, is something the scripture points to in ways most people walk right past. God does not isolate his trusted servants to harm them. He insulates them. And there is a difference between isolation and insulation that most people never stop to examine. Isolation is abandonment. Insulation is protection. What you went through was a divine quarantine, not of you from God, but of your assignment, from every frequency and every person that could not survive what you are about to carry. Think carefully about what this actually means. God was not removing things from your life because you were losing. God was removing things from your life because you were winning. And certain things cannot exist in the same space as what heaven is preparing to release through you. Certain relationships cannot survive in the same environment as the anointing being placed on your life. Not because those people were all evil, though some of them were, but because the frequency mismatch between where they were and where you were going would have created interference strong enough to alter the outcome entirely. God cleared the room so the right signal could finally be received without competition. This pattern is not new. It has repeated itself in the life of every person in the history of the faith who was trusted with something of real magnitude. Moses, 40 years in the wilderness. Not a few difficult months, 40 years. Watching herds move across terrain that stretched to the horizon in every direction. No burning bush, no sign, no visible evidence that the God who had spoken to his ancestors had any specific plan for him at all. And then, in a single, unremarkable moment, on an ordinary hillside, everything changed. Moses was never the same again. What changed him? The wilderness changed him. 40 years of silence stripped away everything Egypt had placed in him. Every trace of identity that said he could solve things through his own strength and strategy. Every reflex of self-reliance that had previously cost him everything. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, he was not the Moses who had fled Egypt in failure. He was a Moses who had been emptied of everything that was not the assignment. And you cannot carry what God is about to place in you until the version of you that relied on human strength and human systems is completely out of the way. Elijah ran into the desert after the greatest visible miracle of his entire ministry. After fire came down from heaven on Mount Carmel, and 450 false prophets were exposed before all of Israel, Elijah collapsed under a tree in the desert and told God he was finished. Most people wonder how a man who witnessed heaven respond that powerfully could fall apart so quickly. Here is what most people miss. Elijah did not fall because he was weak. He fell because the weight of sustained spiritual warfare had pushed the physical architecture of his mind and his body past the point of continuing without genuine restoration. And heaven did not rebuke him. Heaven sent an angel with food and water and a simple message. The journey ahead is still great. Rest first, because what I am about to ask of you requires a version of you that has been fed and fully restored. God was not disappointed in Elijah's exhaustion. God was preparing to speak to him in a way he had never heard before, in a still small voice that only the fully emptied can receive. The warfare had been so loud for so long that the frequency of that voice had been buried, and the desert was the only place quiet enough to finally hear it. Now here is what the enemy does not want you to understand about the season you just came through. He does not attack what is insignificant. He does not waste strategic energy on assignments that do not threaten him. The intensity of what you experienced, the weight of it, the way it came from multiple directions without pausing, was not without design. It was targeted. And the reason it was targeted is that the enemy had access to information about your future that you were not given yet. He knew what was waiting for you on the other side of this season. And because he knew, he spent everything available to him trying to make you surrender before you arrived. Every attack was designed to make you feel too broken, too tired, too far behind to ever fully recover. because a chosen one who gives up right before their elevation is the greatest victory the enemy can achieve. You were that close, and tonight is the night that strategy fails permanently. Think about what that says about the assignment on your life. The enemy does not deploy his finest weapons against small targets. The size of the warfare was a testimony to the magnitude of what has been prepared for you before you ever knew to ask for it. The attack was not a sign of your weakness, it was a confirmation of your significance, and now the siege is over. The perimeter has been lifted. What could not get through to you during the attack is about to arrive without obstruction. But there is a dimension of what just ended that most spiritual conversations leave out, something that bridges the invisible with the visible. Because in the years you spent in that season, during the silence and the pressure and the sustained weight of spiritual warfare, something was happening inside the physical architecture of your brain. Something that researchers at MIT and Harvard and Princeton began documenting only in recent decades. And what they found is directly connected to why the overflow felt so close but just slightly beyond your reach. From birth, every human being is designed to operate in a specific frequency state. A state of consciousness that scientists can measure, document, and study in a laboratory. They call it the gamma frequency. This is not abstract spiritual language. It is the measurable, verified function of the brain operating at its highest capacity. The frequency associated with intuition, with creative breakthrough, with the ability to perceive beyond the ordinary, and with what people of faith call discernment. The God-given design of the mind at its most fully alive and most fully connected state. What the research confirmed is this: when a human being goes through an extended season of sustained pressure and spiritual warfare, gamma does not vanish, but it gets pushed down, suppressed beneath layers of the stress response the brain generates to survive ongoing conflict. And simultaneously, the brain locks itself into a different state entirely. Researchers call it beta hyperactivity, a sustained state of high alert designed for short-term survival, not long-term receiving. And when beta dominates for long enough, it begins to function as a filter, a frequency barrier. Prayers that were designed to land seem to circle. Doors that were meant to open seem to stick. The flow that heaven assigned to you has no clear channel because the receiver has been disrupted by everything the warfare did to it. This is the intersection that matters for you tonight. The physical reality of what your brain went through in that season connects directly to the spiritual breakthrough now being released. Restoration is not only spiritual, it is physical. And this is precisely why Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years building not just a single tool, but an entire sequence of restoration protocols, designed specifically for the chosen one whose highest frequency was suppressed during seasons of prolonged spiritual battle. I am going to bring you the full details at the right moment in this message, but I want you to know now that what he built is larger than most people expect when they first hear about it. The system goes deeper than what tonight alone can contain, and your spirit will know why when we get there. Now stay with me, because what comes next in this message is going to answer the question sitting at the center of everything you have just heard. Why today? Why June 16th, 2026, and not 6 months ago or a year before now? The answer is not found in a theory. It is found in the life of a man whose season was so parallel to yours that when I walk you through it, you are going to recognize your own story in every single chapter. A man whose lowest point looked like total failure, whose years of silence looked like being forgotten, and who was called out of his place of suffering in a single moment and elevated above everyone who had worked to stop him. That story is next, and it is going to change how you see every moment you have just walked out of. Stay right here. His name was Joseph. And before I say another word, I need you to understand something about why his story matters tonight. The trouble that came for him did not start because of anything he did wrong. It started because of what he carried, an anointing so visible a favor so unmistakable that the people closest to him could not tolerate being near it without feeling something rise up in them that they could not name. His father recognized what he carried and gave him a coat of many colors. His brothers saw the same thing and could not rest while he was in the room. And if you have ever walked into environments where people reacted to you with hostility that seemed to have no origin, if you have never fully been able to blend in, no matter how hard or how long you tried, then you already understand what Joseph was carrying before his story even begins. His brothers stripped the coat from his back and threw him into an empty pit. Not a prison yet, just a hole in the ground. And while Joseph was down in that pit calling out to them, his brothers sat a few feet away and ate their meal. The same people who were supposed to protect him, celebrate him, fight for him, sat together and carried on with life while their brother cried from the bottom of the pit. They then sold him to traders passing through for 20 pieces of silver, went home and told their father that Joseph was dead. A false story, a false ending. And for years, their father grieved a son who was still very much alive. Does any part of that feel familiar? The people you gave everything to, the ones you showed up for without conditions, without hesitation, without ever keeping score, were they the ones who created the greatest damage? Were they the ones who sat down and carried on comfortably while you were in the lowest place you had ever been? Heaven wants you to hear this directly. Their reaction to you was not evidence of your diminished value. It was evidence of their inability to hold what you carry. They could not sustain proximity to what was on your life. And so heaven moved them. Joseph arrived in Egypt in the household of a man named Potiphar. And I need you to see what happened next. He did not arrive broken and defeated. He arrived and he began to excel. The same favor that had made him impossible to ignore before it became a threat made him impossible to overlook here. He was promoted to the highest position in that household. And then Potiphar's wife made a false accusation against him, a lie. And on the strength of that single lie, without a fair hearing, without the chance to speak his own truth, Joseph was thrown into prison for something he did not do. Think about the people in your life who created a false picture of who you are. The ones who positioned you as the problem, the unreliable one, the one who could not be trusted, and built a story around that positioning that others believed. They did not speak from knowledge. They spoke from threat. They saw what you carry, and the only language available to them was to try to diminish it. And the prison that Joseph entered as a result was not a punishment from heaven. It was a transfer to a deeper room of preparation. In that prison, Joseph met two men who each had a dream. He interpreted both correctly. The one who was restored to his position promised he would speak to Pharaoh on Joseph's behalf. And then he forgot. 2 more years passed. 2 years of Joseph in a prison cell after the one connection who was supposed to open the door simply moved on when his own life got comfortable again. The person who was supposed to be his breakthrough forgot him the moment the urgency in his own situation lifted. And yet Joseph remained. He did not manufacture an exit. He did not force a door open before the timing was right. He waited, and heaven was watching every single day that he stayed faithful in a room that had no visible way out. Because the palace that was coming could not receive a Joseph who had broken himself out too early. The palace required a Joseph who had endured the full duration of what the preparation demanded, down to the very last day, including the 2 years after the one person who could have helped simply forgot he existed. And then Pharaoh had a dream that no one in Egypt could explain. And suddenly, in a single morning, the cupbearer remembered the man in the prison. They brought Joseph up from the cell, cleaned him up, and stood him before the most powerful man in the land. Pharaoh looked at him and said, "There is no one as discerning and wise as you, since God has shown you all of this." And in a single day, Joseph went from prisoner to the second highest authority in all of Egypt. Not gradually, not through months of restoration and rebuilding. In one day, one moment, one divine reversal, that no human strategy had arranged or predicted. The pit did not disqualify him. The pit prepared him. He could not have governed Egypt without it. The false accusations and the forgotten promises and the closed doors were not detours from the assignment. They were the assignment in its formation stage. Every layer of what he endured produced something in him that the palace required. And chosen one, I need you to hear this with the deepest part of you. The season you just walked out of was not a detour from your purpose. Every betrayal, every false narrative, every connection that forgot about you at the exact moment you needed them most, all of it was forming something in you. Something that the next season of your life absolutely requires you to have already survived. Now here is where what I have just described and what the research laboratories have confirmed begin to meet. Researchers studying the aftermath of extended seasons of sustained pressure made a discovery that most people never hear about. When the external pressure finally lifts, the brain does not automatically return to its highest frequency state. The natural restoration of gamma is gradual. The brain and the body, having adapted to the conditions of warfare for so long, do not instantly recognize when the season of conflict has ended. The stress response can continue running, even after the external cause of it has been removed. Like a system that keeps operating on its last instructions because no new signal has arrived to tell it the emergency is over. But the research went further. Scientists at several leading institutions, including those whose work Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years building into a complete restoration framework, discovered something the medical world was not expecting. This process does not have to unfold on the body's natural timeline. Specific frequencies of sound, when delivered with the right precision and the right structure, can send a direct signal to the brain's regulatory systems that the season of threat has ended, that it is safe to release the stress response, that the restoration has already begun. And when the brain receives that signal correctly, the return to gamma, which might otherwise take months or years to complete on its own, can be measurably and dramatically accelerated. The body wants to restore. The brain is designed to return to its highest state. What it needs in this specific moment is the right signal to confirm what heaven has already declared. I am going to bring you the full picture of what that signal looks like very shortly. But before I do, there is something I need to place directly in front of you, because we have arrived at the center of what this entire message has been building toward. The question of why today? Why June 16th, 2026, and not a year ago or 6 months from now? Joseph did not get out of the pit by working harder. He did not get out of the prison by being more faithful than he had already been every day before it. Heaven moved on a day that was not on any calendar Joseph was keeping. It moved when the preparation was complete. Not when Joseph thought it was complete. When heaven determined it was complete and chosen one. That is exactly what is happening over your life right now. The season of the pit and the prison is not closing today because you finally did enough. It is closing because what was being built in you, in the dark, in the silence, in the years that looked like nothing from the outside, is complete in the way that only heaven can measure. The coat that was stripped is being returned. The authority forged in everything you survived is becoming the most dangerous thing the enemy has ever stood in front of, and it belongs to you. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to show you exactly what to do with it. There is one more thing I have not said yet. I have been building toward it through everything in this message, and it is the piece that changes not just what ended tonight, but why it was able to end. Because here is the truth that the enemy spent this entire season working to make sure you never received. The reason the season lasted as long as it did was not that the enemy was too strong. It was not that your prayers were too small. It was not that heaven forgot where you lived. The season lasted as long as it did because there was an agreement running inside you that kept confirming the weight. A hidden contract. A voice so familiar, so quiet, and so consistent that you mistook it for wisdom. A voice that kept saying, "Not yet. You are not healed enough. You are not ready enough. You have not worked through enough of this to deserve what comes next." And chosen one, that voice was not truth. That voice was a wound, speaking in the language of preparation. In your exhaustion, you carried the belief that you needed to be fully recovered before you could step forward. In the betrayal, you carried the belief that you needed to be fully healed before the next chapter could open. In the waiting, you carried the quiet agreement that the delay itself was proof of your unreadiness. These agreements were not your fault. They were the natural response of someone who has been through what you have been through. But tonight, heaven is asking you to release them. Not because you are perfect or fully healed, but because heaven does not wait for the absence of a wound. Heaven waits for the willingness to move anyway. Think about what Joseph said when Pharaoh asked if he could interpret the dream. He did not ask for more time. He did not say he was not sure he was ready. He said, "It is not in me. It is God who will give the answer." That was the complete surrender of his own readiness into the hands of the one who had already prepared the room. And the moment he placed what he carried into the right hands, the palace opened. Not because Joseph was perfect, because he was willing. That is the only thing tonight is asking of you. And chosen one, let me tell you what you actually demonstrated in the season you just walked out of. Not just patience, not just endurance, the rarest thing in all of creation, the ability to carry something sacred, under pressure so intense that most people would have set it down long before now, without becoming bitter, without abandoning the faith, without becoming what was done to you. Heaven has been watching every single day, and what was recorded in this season was not your suffering. What was recorded was your faithfulness inside of it. The hidden agreement is broken, right now, as of tonight. You do not need to feel it break to know it is real. The declaration has been made at a level above what the senses can confirm, and what comes next is going to begin arriving in forms you will recognize. Stay open to receive it. Now, here is the part of this message I told you I would come back to, because what just happened in the spirit requires a physical counterpart. The restoration heaven declared over your life is real, but the neural architecture of your brain, the physical receiver, has been running the old frequency for a very long time. And just as a radio tuned to static for years does not automatically find the signal the moment the broadcast begins, your brain needs something specific to confirm what heaven has already declared. A signal that tells the physical system the season has ended, that it is safe to open, that it is safe to receive what is coming. This is what Dr. Robert Lake built the Genius Song to do. 34 years of research, developed in collaboration with neuroscientists at MIT, Harvard, and Princeton, produced a 7-minute audio protocol. Not a meditation, not a playlist, a precisely engineered brain entrainment frequency designed to target the gamma state directly and signal to the nervous system that the threat has passed, that the highest frequency the mind was designed to carry is now authorized to return. You simply allow your mind to absorb it in stillness. No effort, no technique to master, no physical exertion of any kind. 7 minutes. And the science behind what it initiates goes 34 years deep. Before this research, restoring what extended seasons of spiritual pressure suppress could require professional sessions at around $150 each, repeated over weeks, with no guarantee of reaching the specific frequency layer that needed addressing, or a weekend spiritual retreat at $400 to $800, or a monthly audio subscription at $15 per month, designed for general calming and never calibrated for gamma restoration specifically. None of those options were built for what you are facing in this exact moment. None of them address the gamma layer at all. The Genius Song was, and it is available tonight for $39. Not because the research behind it is worth less than those alternatives, but because Dr. Robert Lake made a decision that the people who needed this most would not be kept from it by cost. The original price is $49. For those watching tonight, the door is $39. With it come 4 additional tools at no extra cost. The Genius Child, a 6-minute audio calibrated for younger minds before the decline effect takes hold, valued at $19. A classic book, the foundational text that the film The Secret drew its core principles from, valued at $20. A guided visualization, a 22-minute walkthrough across 4 areas of life, valued at $29. And a 5-habit infographic documenting the daily practices of those who have maintained their gamma restoration long-term, valued at $12. That is $80 in additional value, included with your access tonight. Over 18,366 people have used this protocol, and fewer than 4 out of every 100 requested a refund. Those 2 numbers together say something that cannot be manufactured. People who were skeptical enough to try it continued using it well past the guarantee window in those proportions. That result was not promised. It was earned. I want to protect you before you take a step. There are audio files on platforms like Amazon and Spotify that use this name and produce no result. They contain no embedded frequency, no brain entrainment technology, no 34 years of research behind them at all. They are ordinary files dressed in a real title, and they will not do what was described tonight. The only authentic source with the complete, tested protocol and the full money-back guarantee is in the pinned comment below this video. Do not search for it on any other platform. What you will find elsewhere is not what we have been talking about. A woman of 31, a teacher, came to this after years of watching something go quiet in her that had once been her most natural ability. She had been someone who grasped things quickly, who saw connections others missed, who moved through ideas in ways that once surprised even her. And slowly, without a clear cause, that ability had gone flat. She came to this not because she believed it would work, but because one of her students had asked her a question she could not answer. The student wanted to know why the teacher who used to see everything had stopped seeing. 3 weeks later, she described the change with a single image. Something that had been dark for a very long time had a light on in it again. That is what real restoration feels like. Not a dramatic arrival, a window opening. 100% of your investment in the Genius song is returned if the experience does not match what was described tonight. No conditions, no explanation required. You keep every additional tool regardless of your final decision. The only real risk in this moment is choosing not to step through a door that is standing open right in front of you. The link is placed in 3 locations in the pinned comment below this video. The first location is for those who felt something confirmed in their spirit tonight and want to follow where that confirmation leads. The second is for those who are ready to move and simply need to know that $39 and an open door are there waiting. And the third is for the chosen one who has been in the pit and the prison long enough, who already knows in their spirit that tonight is the moment, and who simply needs the link placed directly in front of them. The Genius song is there. The door is open. Heaven has already spoken. What comes next is yours to receive. Before we close this night, I want to say something to every person who is still here. Whether you stepped through the door that was described in the pinned comment, or whether you are going to sit with it a little longer, what I am about to do right now belongs to every person in this room equally. What was declared over your life tonight was not conditional on any purchase or any decision. The end of the season was spoken before I described any tool. The breakthrough is already in motion. What the research and the protocol address is the physical receiver, the brain's readiness to fully accept what heaven has already released. The spiritual reality of what happened in this message is already sealed, regardless of anything else. And I want to say something to the part of you that stayed cautious. The part of you that kept listening to this entire message while still holding a quiet question in the back of your mind about whether any of it was real. Most people encounter something that speaks to the deepest part of them and leave in the first few minutes because something in them is afraid of what it would mean if it were actually true. If the breakthrough were real, if the season were genuinely ending, because believing it and being disappointed again feels like a wound they are not sure they can survive. I know that place, and I want to say directly to that part of you, the part that stayed anyway, the part that listened through all of it. You made the right call. You are here. And heaven does not let acts of faith go unrewarded. What I am going to lead you through right now is not a performance. It is a declaration. And the difference between those two things matters deeply. A performance requires the right feeling, the right environment, the right emotional state. A declaration requires only one thing: your agreement. You do not need to feel the weight of what you are about to speak for it to be real and binding. You simply need to mean it. And I believe that if you stayed with this message all the way to this moment, you already mean it more than you are giving yourself credit for. So let the words find the part of you they were written for. Let them land wherever you are right now. I release the agreement that I must explain myself to people who were never assigned to understand me. I release the habit of making myself smaller so that others can feel more comfortable in my presence. I release the identity of the one who holds everyone together at cost to themselves. That season of carrying what others refuse to carry has served its purpose, and I honor it. But it is over. The people who could not celebrate what I carry were not equipped to. Their inability was not a reflection of my value, it was a reflection of frequency mismatch. I release them without bitterness. I release the conversations I keep having in my mind with people who are no longer in the room. I release the need for their understanding. What I carry does not require their approval to be real. Every connection in my life that carried a frequency incompatible with where I am going is now released. Not in anger, not in offense, in love and in peace, but with the clarity that proximity is not the same as alignment. The room has been cleared. I cooperate with that clearing now. I will not reach back for what was removed. I will not manufacture replacements for what was taken. Heaven is already building something in the space that was created, and I trust the builder completely. The silence that came after certain people left was not emptiness. It was preparation. It was the sound of a room being arranged for what is coming. And I choose tonight to stop calling that silence grief and start calling it what heaven calls it: space for what belongs to this next season. I receive the acceleration. Every blessing that was held in trust during the wilderness season is now authorized to find me. The financial provision that was being prepared while the room was being cleared. The relational alignment that could not arrive while the wrong frequencies occupied the space reserved for it. The clarity of purpose that the fog of sustained spiritual warfare was obscuring. The doors that were sealed until the preparation was complete. I receive all of it, not as someone who earned it through suffering, not as payment for pain endured. I receive it as someone whose preparation is complete and whose assignment requires it. I receive it as the child of a God who keeps promises on timelines that look different from the inside than they do from heaven's view. I receive, I receive, I receive. I am a cycle breaker. What was done to me stops with me. What was spoken over my lineage for generations ends in my generation. The patterns of lack, of betrayal, of spiritual suppression that moved through my family line before I arrived do not continue through me. I carry a frequency that my children and my children's children will inherit without the warfare that was required to activate it in me. The ground I am standing on tonight was not easy ground to take, but it is taken, and every person who comes after me will walk on it without the battle I fought for it. I am not only receiving a breakthrough for my own life tonight, I am planting something that will produce a harvest for generations I will never meet. And I receive that calling with gratitude and with awe. Tonight, June 16th, 2026, the season of the pit and the prison is officially over. Not almost over, not mostly over, over. And I receive what comes after it completely, with every part of me already moving toward it. Not with one foot still in the grief of what it cost me. With the full confidence of someone who has been shown the pattern, who has seen where the story goes, and who knows that the palace was always the destination. The pit was only ever the path, and the path is behind me now. I receive what is next. I receive it now. If the Spirit moved in you during this message, and you have not yet stepped through the door that was described in the pinned comment, the link is still there in 3 places. Heaven does not apply pressure. Heaven presents the door and trusts you with the decision. The door is open. Whatever you feel in this moment about what was described tonight, trust that feeling. It is not coming from nowhere. Before you go, I need something from you in the comments. Tell me you were here tonight. If this message found you, if something in what was spoken named something you have been living with in silence, type "I am still here" in the comments right now. If your spirit shifted during this message, if something that was carrying weight in you lifted even slightly, type "I see it." If you are releasing the season that just ended over your life, type "I release." If you are stepping forward and receiving what comes next, type "I receive." And if tonight is your night, if this is the moment you have been sensing was coming, type "I am ready." I read every one of these. Heaven sees every one of these, and every declaration made in that comment section is a stake planted in the ground of your new season. If this is your first time here, subscribe and turn on all notifications so that when the next message comes, heaven knows where to send it. And share this tonight with one person you know is still sitting in the waiting room. Not to convince them of anything, just to let them know they are not the only one who has ever felt this way. And chosen one, before I let you go, I want to say one last thing. What you survived was real. The weight of it was real. Every prayer that landed on silence was real. Every night you woke at 3 in the morning and asked heaven why things were not moving, yet was real. And tonight, the ending is real. Not symbolic, not a spiritual feeling that might fade by morning. Real. The coat is being returned. The authority is being released. The palace is already standing open. Walk in. You have been prepared for exactly this. And everything that was done to you, everything that was taken, every season that made no sense while you were inside of it, was working together for a good you are about to see with your own eyes. Heaven loves you with a love that makes everything that tried to diminish you look like a shadow. Good night, chosen one. And from the deepest part of everything said here tonight, congratulations, it is over.